Okay, great. So we're connected on YouTube. Anybody who's watching there, feel free to leave a comment there as well if you'd like to work on something. So we're in the pre-game here. We're just giving it a couple minutes before the official start time to see if there are any others who are connecting. I have one request via email that I'm getting ready to go here. So we definitely have some EFT today by request. Yep, we'll just give it another maybe 2 minutes or so, and then I'll start recording. And like I said, those of you who are watching on YouTube, you're welcome to post something in there. If you have any issues you'd like to work on, you can request specifically if you like EFT tapping, and you'd like to do a round on something, or we can approach it in any of the other ways I use. I tend to combine them anyway, even if I am doing EFT, to use a little bit of meditation of sorts, where I call it guided awareness, where we're checking in and getting a little bit more connected to the feelings underneath and some of the broader underlying themes going on for us as well, because sometimes you could tap on almost anything, right? The moment any thought, feeling, issue comes up, you could tap on it right away, right at sort of the level it's at. But taking a little time to connect to it, a little, the deeper underlying issue is something I really enjoy doing, and find it makes the whole process much more effective. So let me start the recording, and we will kick things off here. Okay, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today on this week of processing call events. Just been experimenting with different times, seeing what works well for people, and having multiple opportunities in the same week for those of us who can't attend some other times. So thanks to those of you who are here live, and if you're on YouTube, feel free to say hello there. I'll try my best to manage the two places. So this is the support call. It's available for questions and answers for anything related to inner work, how to process different techniques I use like EFT and inner reconciliation, if you know me from there. And we're welcome to approach it from, I want actual support to work on something, where you come up on the microphone and we work on something together. That's available today. Or a general sort of processing round or a tapping round by request. Like I said, we do have one specifically requesting that. Or just Q&A. Okay, how could I work with this further? What's I feel stuck when I try to work on this area, or these are some emotions I'm feeling. What's a way to work forward with that? That's one of my favorite things to engage in. So today's call will be approximately 60 minutes long. You're welcome to put any subject or issue into the chat. You can just type it right in there. And feel free to be as specific as you like. If you really want to get into some of the details for you, you're totally welcome to do that. If you want to keep it very general for whatever reason, including just not wanting to get into details, you're welcome to do that. Relax and enjoy. The replay is always going to be on YouTube. That might be the easiest place to see it, since you all have YouTube. Or you can go to that site that's on the screen. It's actually now innerwork.space, but that site will work as well. Great, we've got some good questions already. And just a few links here if you're not in the Facebook group, which is where we can engage with each other during the week and more freely. You don't have to wait for the calls to do that, obviously. There's a link on the screen for that. You'll have to type these in. I'll put these in the chat as well, so that you can just click on them in the chat. The YouTube, you may be watching this there. I would greatly appreciate it if you actually do like what this is and getting some benefit from it. You could help us out by clicking the thumbs up or subscribing to the channel. And there's a blog that I write different articles and thoughts and processes and such. And people have been engaging in the comments there. And to encourage that, I give away a 30-minute session every month to one individual who's engaged in those discussions. So, of course, I'm not a doctor, therapist, psychologist. I'm not a medical professional of any sorts, nor did I ever pursue a degree in those fields. I do have certifications in some of the processes I use, but that does not qualify me in any way to diagnose, treat, give medical advice of any kind. So please consider this to be in the realm of guided meditation, emotional exploration. While, of course, the point of this is to hopefully experience some physical relief, some release of tensions and emotional constriction, I don't consider this to be a substitute for medical or psychological care in any way. I don't endorse a philosophy about this, so I would never recommend to you, well, all diseases can be tapped away or anything like that. I had recently surgery performed on a broken kneecap, and I was really glad that there was someone there to actually perform that surgery. So that's where I'm coming from with all this. In these calls, you agree to, take responsibility for your own well-being. Can't treat. Well, Evan told me that to do this, a doctor's not going to accept that. There's an option to donate. That link will be in the chat. But, I'm skipping by that because even more important than donating for a small, humble organization, one-man show like this, one of the best things you can do right now is let everyone know that these calls are open and free to anyone. You don't have to have gone through any type of program or done any of the inner reconciliation stuff. Anyone who enjoys any type of inner work, EFT, meditation, this is all about that. So there's a free course, Reconciling with Money. If you don't have that, you can get that for free. And like I said, subscribe or like the videos. Any of that stuff helps tremendously. So yeah, let's get out of that. And we have some nice questions and different requests already. So let me take a brief look at what they are to see what we might want to tackle first. We do have one EFT round for sure by request. Okay, this one looks like a little more of a Q&A first, so we'll do that one first. When spiritual teachers recommend focusing on our own mortality in a non-morbid way as a practice. Yes, I've gotten a lot of mileage out of that myself for sure. I have a general sense of what I think they are talking about. There is a me that I sense that is invisible and may be around after the physical body dies. Is that sense that I can focus on? That's a really interesting question. So rather than, I'm obviously not a spiritual teacher, and since where I'm coming from, even with spiritual teachers I've worked with and studied with, and I'm a big fan of Adyashanti, and worked really closely with G.P. Walsh, who takes a real spiritual approach to these sort of techniques that I like to use in a more, let's say, agnostic, practical way. I feel like I actually prefer just a direct sort of non-spiritualized approach to even some of these exercises. And so to address this question of what you actually sense and experience, right? So there's a me that I sense is invisible. So what you can do, just experiment with that for a little bit. And you'll notice, by the way, everybody, that I tap the entire time. If you're someone who likes EFT, I found from a recent workshop I did with Brad Yates that the more you do it, the better it works, regardless of what you're talking about, even if you're talking about the weather. So you can close your eyes and just take a deep breath. And I call this guided awareness. Now, you notice, you've heard this before, where I say, put your attention on the breath. And the more interested you are, the more you're sort of, let's say, focused on the actual breath itself, you'll notice that it's a very visceral experience that becomes more and more clear when you decide to put your focus on it, right? So you've been breathing the entire time of this call, hopefully, but it becomes conscious when you say, okay, let me direct my attention, whatever mysterious way we actually do that. So now it's like you're aware of breath. Right? Breathing was happening. But the more you zero in on it, you can feel all these little details, like what the air feels like going through my nose. You can feel the chest expand. You might breathe a little bit better or deeper when you put your attention on it. And so this is a more obvious sense to focus on because it's you actually feel the sort of physical experience of the air. And now you can get a little more subtle, like I always do, where you say, okay, now, if I ask you, how are you feeling emotionally? You can become more aware of that. You sort of direct your attention there. And the details of it become a little bit more clear. And then going to your question, you say, there's a me that I sense that is invisible. So in a similar way, it's a more subtle thing, right? The first is physical, the first is a little more emotional. Now see if you can become interested in what it is when you actually begin to move your attention anywhere. Another way to say that, you say, okay, I'm going to put my attention on the breathing. And so the breathing becomes the interesting thing, right? The thing you're focused on. You say, okay, if I decide to put my attention on my breathing, can I start to zero in on what that experience is of my attention actually moving? Where is that attention? What is the experience of that attention moving? When you say there's a me that I sense that is invisible. So rather than getting all, non-dual and talking about it for 2 hours, just like breathing is a physical thing you can focus on, when you say, I sense that is invisible, right? See if, without thinking too much about how do I do this, right? Just turn your attention on to what, when you describe, I sense this, I sense that I'm here. I sense there's a me that isn't physical. See if you can become interested in what, like the verb of I sense. So you can just relax into what the experience is of not the thought, oh, I'm sensing an invisible me, right? That actually is all thinking. But there's an experience, just like breathing is an experience that you can focus on the feeling of the air. Focus as best you can on just that feeling of whatever that is that lets you say the sentence, I sense. And now to potentially drive this home a little more, let's kind of, just like you can move your attention from your left shoulder to your right shoulder, move your attention from however subtle it is, that feeling of just, okay, I'm sensing. I can viscerally, in some way, experience what it is to just sort of feel that I have a body, to feel that there's some sort of thing that would say, I'm alive. Now switch your focus from that to the thought of there's a me that's invisible. Do you feel how that is sort of a more like your mind almost basically draws a picture of the invisible me? It's like looking for it, it turns it into a thing to focus on. Just like we can sort of talk about breathing, you can talk about the nuances of it. One thing that's been coming to me a lot is like, I don't know if you can hear that at all, but I could sit here all day and describe to you, yeah, this is what it feels like to play the bass, right? And I can get into a bunch of deep sounding things like, yeah, and then you merge with the instrument and all is one. And but who cares? Who cares about hearing me talk about it? What does it actually feel like to play the instrument? That's all I'm interested in for anyone. So there's no spiritual teacher or anyone on the planet, in my opinion, has like more, how would you describe it? Authority to tell you what it's like. Just be interested. You're not in any way unequipped or not prepared or not ready to have the actual realization, the actual sense of it. It's as available to you as it is to anybody. And so, again, we're playing back and forth with take a breath, focus on the feeling of the air through the nose. And then it's more subtle, but just focus on the actual experience that you can't put any of it to words, just like I can't really put playing bass into words. Right? What I say, it feels good. Who cares how poetic I am? Put the attention on the experience of not the breathing, but the sense of the thing that's aware, the feeling of I can feel sensation. When you say I have a general sense there's an invisible me, become less interested in the thought or the mind draws of an invisible person and become most interested in the part where you say I sense. It is like an alert curiosity to the sensation. Excellent. Yeah. And I would never feel qualified to say like, yeah, that's the right way to feel it. It's that you're diving into what it actually is. And you may have noticed if we were to meditate on our breath for a couple hours, the nuances of the breath would become more clear. You might start breathing deeper into the body. It might actually become more of a habit. Right? Again, if you think of practicing an instrument, it's just over the years of practicing it, I'm much more attuned to the little tiniest movement of my left finger. And we don't get that by talking about it. It's what gives you that is the amount of time you spend playing the bass. So curiosity, I think, is a beautiful thing because when you become curious about the sensation, you will actually curiosity lets you stay in there and actually be interested and engaged in it. So see if you can feel that difference between, okay, I'm just focused on this, what it is to sense, what that actually feels like, and what the experience is for me. And see what happens when you say, okay, I'm looking for the answer. How would I correctly describe this? It kind of shuts it down. It turns into like I'm taking a test. But if you say, like you said, okay, just stay with the curiosity of what the experience is. For me, that gets you deeper into it. Rather than like an end point of like, okay, now I got it. It's sort of this just deepening into the thing of it, of what it is. Like, would I ever be able to say, okay, I got it, I play the bass now? Arguably, I could say that when I was 20, in that I could actually play it, and I knew what it felt like to play it. But it's a way deeper, way more nuanced thing years later. But I'm still curious about it. So let me know if what you find, what I like about this is it's almost like all the other stuff around it. Like, okay, I'm focusing on my own mortality, or there's a sense of me or a me after I die, or what is oneness. It's like that just all sort of drops away as words, because again, it's like me talking about playing the bass. I don't really care about the words. That stuff begins to fall away more, and you just kind of get more and more engaged into what it is to actually focus on it. And then you're really doing that exercise, whether you think about it in terms of mortality or not. I find the mortality angle can ramp it up a bit, where if it's useful to you, like if you think about, okay, if the body goes away, and to me, it's useful if it makes you go deeper into it. It's completely useless if it makes you start thinking, well, what is consciousness? And then you're asking questions. Well, if consciousness is all there is, then what is, to me, waste of time? It's an intellectual exercise. I keep using this analogy, but yes, good. You said mortality just makes the exercise more urgent and important. That's where it's useful to me. Because there's a way that playing the bass to me it's useful to sort of like, what if this is the last gig I ever get to play? Suddenly it's like, get in there, make this count, play for keeps. Don't be focused on the little, don't be wasting time with, oh, I don't love the way I sound, or, right? If it ramps up the exercise, excellent. Yes, exactly. If I look for an answer, the experience goes from sensation into a picture. Perfect. The picture is never satisfying. Yet the sensation itself doesn't satisfy the answer until I stop asking the question. Perfect. Perfectly said. Yeah, beautiful. So the short answer of that is like, just like you can focus on the breathing, you can focus on the sense, the sensing itself as an actual experience that you can meditate on and delve into. And then all the philosophy around it just becomes sort of irrelevant. Great, thank you. Let me know if you want me to if you want to dive any deeper into that, or if anything is unclear. Hopefully that gives you a sense of how you can continue to explore that in a, let's say, non-philosophical way that doesn't require anyone to tell you anything. Okay, great. So we have the tapping round. Someone requested about mask wearing, which we will certainly do. I may do that next. Let's do that now. Let me pull that up while anyone else is typing in if they had any further questions about what I was just saying there. And so we're going to do an EFT round. Can we tap? Hi, Evan. Could we tap on this on Thursday? I think I'm not the only person with this problem. I can guarantee you're not. As I don't want to wear a mask. And there's some extra nuances this person put in, which is fantastic because it'll bring up even more sort of the different emotional energies around it by reading some of the words. So let's do that. So first, let's take a deep breath. And I like to begin tapping right away. So I'm just going to tap on my collarbone. And while you're tuned into what your body feels like right now, it doesn't have to be a super deep meditation or anything, just checking in with yourself, seeing where you're holding tension, where you're feeling relaxed. And now we're just going to introduce into this the statement as it was written, I don't want to wear a mask. And now you're just going to focus on all the reactions that come up. You welcome the thoughts, you welcome, notice if the body has shifted at all from what it was a second ago before we said that. Any emotional responses coming up? And this will help give you a sense. And often in EFT, you rate it 1 to 10. If you like gauging it like that, it can be useful. So you could say what level of truth and tension that creates for you. So you could say 10 feels like, oh my God, I do not want to wear that mask. And you're really feeling that emotionally. All the way down to whatever. Could wear a mask all day. What do I care? See where you're at with it. And we'll ratchet it up potentially with some of the other statements they sent in. Is this fear or fear that I am seen as being fearful? So let's introduce what others will think of me if I'm wearing this mask. See what that does for you. Is there any rebellious part of me? Is it, or the refusal to accept a new normal? So again, we're just tuning into these statements and being most interested in how they're affecting you from a more neutral state before we said them. And then physically, breathing through a mask is just very uncomfortable. So you could take note for yourself if you have a particularly strong reaction to any or all aspects of this, in case you want to pursue it further on your own. And let's just do some tapping together on the whole subject. So, even though I don't want to wear a mask, I choose to deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I don't want to wear a mask, there's a fear that I'm giving in to fear. There's a fear of how I might be seen as someone who's giving in to fear. Any refusal in me, and even just the physical discomfort of it. So even though I don't want to wear this mask, I choose to deeply and completely love and honor myself. So even though I don't want to wear a mask, and all these different reasons for why I don't want to. Physically, I don't like the fact that I'm being told to. Any inner conflict about it being responsible or irresponsible. Fear that I'm buying into fear, or seen as being fearful. Even though I have all this going on about wearing a mask, I choose to deeply and completely love, honor, and accept myself. Maybe even loving and accepting the mask, maybe at least being open to loving and accepting anyone who's making me wear it. So, through the points now. I don't want to wear a mask. I do not want to wear this mask. Part of it's just physically. It's not comfortable. It's a pain to have to do it. Breathing is uncomfortable. It doesn't always sit on my face well. I'm not sure if it's on right. Any part of me that wonders if this is even helpful. And what it's accomplishing for me or others. There's a rebellious part of me. I don't like being told I have to wear this. And this part of me absolutely might react this way. Even if there was 100% proof that all of my mind agreed with. But yes, I am totally on board and should do this. There still could be a part of me refusing that. Don't tell me what to do. I don't want to accept this new normal. Maybe I don't like what it represents. Maybe I don't like the fact that I'm being told to do it. So all this rebel in me. I'm not going to edit that right now. So any argument back and forth inside myself between being rebellious and simply accepting it. Just going to give full permission for all the parts of me that don't want to do this. Maybe I could never say this out loud. Might be really judged for it. But I need to at least give space and full permission inside myself to say and feel what I actually feel. And maybe beyond being rebellious or refusing to accept the new normal, maybe beyond the physical aspects or how it looks, any sense that I'm giving into fear. I don't want to give in to fear. Part of me may be saying, if you wear that mask, you've surrendered to fear. Maybe part of me is saying, it goes against the principle for me. Again, maybe if I could never say that out loud. I'm just honoring any parts of me that really feel that way. Because if it's just giving in to fear, I definitely don't want to do that. That doesn't align with what I value. allow myself to be open to whatever the truth, or at least something close to true, actually is. I may think it's good to wear a seatbelt in a car. I may have no emotional reaction to that. I could dislike that that's a law. I could have all sorts of feelings about it. There's no complete objective freedom, at least in any society Evan can think of, where there aren't certain things done for safety. So I'm just at least opening to the possibility. That this may not automatically imply that I'm losing to fear, or that I'm buying into something. I may not have objective 100% clarity. I may very much believe in the power of our minds, the power of our emotions, and all sorts of miraculous things that can happen and do happen. But that doesn't mean that all measures go against that. Evan had surgery. He's been walking around on crutches and getting x-rays. I definitely could have said, I'm not buying into that. And this may not be as obvious as a broken bone, but I'm just relaxing my internal tension around it. I'm still allowed to make my own choice. I just am allowing myself to let go of any emotional friction around it that's not serving me. And to make sure nothing's running on assumptions. So it's for my own peace and clarity on the subject. From there, I can still make my own choice. I mean, technically speaking, even if something is a law, I can choose not to obey it. There may be consequences. I may not like that paradigm. But it's about my emotional well-being around it. And of course, I'm not condoning anyone break any laws. And all the fear of how others will think of me. Allowing myself to bring up any thoughts, any audio or images of what I imagine others would say What am I hearing them say when they see me with a mask? Oh, she's afraid? Oh, she bought into it? Doesn't this go against what she believes in? Allowing all of those voices and judgments to come up. And recognizing that even if I'm imagining them as coming from others, this whole picture is happening in my mind right now. Some part of me is playing, representing those images and sounds. And that's good news, because I can turn my attention, listen to, and integrate whatever in me is saying that. I can't do that with someone else's actual words. If I walk past someone while wearing a mask, whatever they think or say to themselves is not my business or my problem. What I imagine that they're probably thinking, that actually is mine. So all this fear of judgment, all the conflict of how I'll be seen, all my inner conflict of how I'll be perceived, maybe my own inner conflicts around the subject. Allowing that all to be felt and be processed through the system here. I deserve my own clarity here. I'm allowing myself to have the space to make my own decision from a place of inner calm. I don't need to hold on to these judgments. I don't need to imagine these reactions. I can let that go more and more. I release all my emotional attachments to I'm giving in to fear. Allowing everything around that to release. And I let go. I release all emotional attachments to what will they think of me? Give them permission to think whatever they think. But within my own universe, I can be clear and peaceful with my own perspective, my own choices, my own way of being. letting go of needing to have a strong point of view about this. Allowing myself to be curious and in tune to what feels best for me and others. And to allow that to unfold in a useful way for me. Allowing my inner state to be the barometer of what I'm feeling. Not whatever is or isn't on my face. Okay. Take a deep breath. Got some more people here, so if anybody has any thoughts, feelings around that, whatever that did for them, feel free to let me know if that touched on anything. It's a great way that was presented to us, because they provided us with a lot of different angles to work with there. So certainly made my job easier and made the whole round, I hopefully, touch on more possible points of tension and conflict for everyone. Great. Oh, great. They said this is the person who sent in the question. She's joining us live. Glad you could be here. Thank you. It's much more clear now. Very glad to hear that. We have one more thing in the chat, which is, hello, I have all the time in the world, but I still don't do all I would like to do. I'm not where I want to be or should be. How can I trust myself if my same self stops me from what I want to achieve? Okay, great. So my mind is blanking on me a bit whether the round I did on sort of the myth of this being free time and I have all the time in the world, I should be doing it, but I'm not. I can't remember if that was a private one-on-one with somebody or if it was on one of the last calls. I think there is a recording of that on one of the calls. So, I mean, I'm definitely happy to go into it again, but I think there might be a longer version of that than what we would be able to do here. And I may focus a little more on the second part, which is a very interesting question, right, to approach from an actual, how do we work on it and not be philosophical about it? Just how can I trust myself if my same self stops me from what I want to achieve? Okay. So I'll approach this in a slightly different way, but you can just keep tapping while we do this if you like to tap. I know the person asking this does, and I do as well. I think this was what the last round was about from the other person that asked about this, but I'd like you to look at the new time you have in front of you. Maybe you're not working as much, you're not being on the subway, sitting in traffic, etc., etc. And look at the part of your mind that labels all of this time as simply free time. Oh yeah, this is just all free time. I should be able to work on whatever I want for 6 hours. Jump from one thing to the next. I can finally read all those books, do all those courses, start that business, right? You're imagining 50 things. I want you to notice that when you're busy with your life prior to this time, there's a fantasy around what it would be like when you finally do have some free time. But notice that in reality, any of these actions that you're taking, such as beginning a project, learning more, absorbing more information, sitting down to plan how you might approach a business or a new course. All of that is taxing and demanding in its own way. Right? It uses energy. And when you're focused, you're fixated on the mental picture of, well, this is just free time. It's like, you couldn't run. This is sounding a lot like the round I did. It's all kind of coming back to me. I'm doing it in a different way than the straight EFT. You couldn't run 6 marathons just because you suddenly have 6 days of free time. Physically, you know that that's absurd because it uses way too much energy and is too taxing on the body. But we look at this free time and think, well, we should just have this sort of boundless energy. But even the act of decision making is very taxing on the brain. It's actually one of the more taxing things, as I understand it. So to have 3 hours in front of you and to have to go through, okay, what should I do with this time, is in and of itself very demanding. The brain has a finite number of decisions it can make in a day before it tires out, that muscle or whatever the term would be. Just give yourself permission to see this more realistically for what it is. Your definitions of where I should be or what I should be accomplishing right now are almost certainly not based in the reality of the energy it actually requires creatively, mentally, emotionally, physically. So allow your mind to relax that label of this is free time and I need to do everything I possibly can in this free time. Just become curious again. See if you can just be interested in seeing more clearly what is realistic, not in the limiting sense of, but just in an honest way, that the standards you're putting on yourself may be absurdly draining and sort of self-abusive. I should be much further. I should be accomplishing more in all this time. You've noticed that being in traffic for a couple hours can be exhausting. Your mind might look at that and go, well, you're just sitting in the car. It's like, no, all the other elements of it are tiring. So just allow yourself to tune in more to what it is you're actually looking to accomplish. The energy, the preparation, everything else that it actually does require of you. And allow that to just sink in and absorb, to say, okay, what's a healthy way to approach this? I can't work out like a maniac and then write 10 chapters of my book and start my new business and make that blog and make a bunch of YouTube videos and practice all the things on the bass I wanted to practice, right? Just because there's suddenly 8 free hours on some Sunday that there never was before. So keep letting the mind's fantasy of this free time let go of that. Just keep asking to see the reality of the time-energy relationship more clearly. Okay, now to wrap it up with the next question here. How can I trust myself if my same self stops me from what I want to achieve? Beautiful question. All right, so close your eyes. And I want you to picture a fire, a burning fire in front of you. And then imagine there's something like you really want on the other side of that fire. There's like a big stack of money or your dream life partner or tickets to wherever, or like on the other side of these hot coals, maybe is a better analogy. It might, notice kind of what you what you might be feeling and thinking in that moment. And all I want you to do is observe what's going on and ask yourself, okay, is the part of me that wants those tickets, that money, whatever's on the other side, and the part of me that's physically in the body, in the nervous, saying, no, we're not going anywhere near that. Broadly, yes, it's the same human being, but are those the same? Is the part of you that wants something and has a vision for what it could look like and what I could do with that money? Is it the same aspect, part of you, however you conceptualize it, that just physically will not go near it? So the key part of the question is, how do I move forward when it's the same self that wants it and is stopping it? Is to look closer at it and see that it's not. It's the same, again, same maybe human. But if you look at it like it was literally, if you see it as literally the same thing, there is no way for any progress to be made. And it would also be sort of strange and cruel to build some kind of machine that could just like want something but also be averse to it. Right? The safety brake and the gas pedal are not the same part of a car. Right? If that safety brake is on, the gas pedal will still just want to go. It's still going to keep trying to go. Right? It doesn't understand. Well, cars these days may have AI or something, but you know what I'm saying. So if you can begin, this is what's cool about inner reconciliation, the process that I was sort of the teacher with G.P. Walsh, is very useful to sort of recognize, first zero in to see that it is a different aspect of myself, similar to the parking brake versus the gas pedal. The part of me wants to move forward. Another part is simply its job to say we don't move away from what's hot. Right? So I'd actually leave it at that as a practice to sort of meditate on the observation and feeling the feelings of noticing the relationship between these really two different parts of a human being. Right? I'm going to jump in the fire. Okay, good. Now your mind might actually have the thought, okay, I'm going to jump into it. It's worth it. You might run towards it and the body is still going to go put the brakes on. You never know. You can't fully override it necessarily. Some people seem to be able to do that at times. But to begin to notice that it's a different mechanism, and how do I work with that? How does one ease the brake? How does the desire get enough momentum, enough passion, enough energy to actually step on those coals? Right? It's just a much more useful question, and I think a more accurate question that can begin to, it can actually begin to sort of work itself out. It can begin to unfold itself a bit. Versus if it's like, okay, I want it, I'm also afraid of it, now I'm stuck. There's very little for us to work with there. To say, part of me can see something, part of me can visualize it, can taste it, smell it, knows I would love to have that in my life. And a very primal aspect of me says, that's not safe. Don't go near that. You're no longer in a impossible situation. It's like just built fundamentally flawed. But it begins the question of like, okay, how do I operate this? Because you notice you're aware of both, right? So you're obviously not either. You're not 100% the part that says, I want that, although we tend to think we are because we're identified with the, I really want that. And then the thing that's saying no, we look at like it's some sort of fault or block, like being mad at the parking brake. Like, why are you doing this? It's not doing it because it doesn't like you. Its job is to put the brakes on. So you can actually just sort of meditate in the observation of those two and just begin asking the question and seeing what happens. I think it's interesting to start with just exploring that. And it's also useful because if that brake is really on for a reason, and a lot of us, I mean, just probably just about every human being on the planet has some very good reasons, some very painful, even traumatic, potentially things that happened. You could tap on your face all day and say, no, I just want to move forward. I just want to go get that goal. This thing doesn't particularly care how much tapping you do if you're not talking to it, if you're not incorporating it in the, okay, yes, I need to be safe. This needs to protect me. Why does this need to protect me? And so on. So that's something we can. Now I'm angry at you and at the break. Interesting. Yes. Good. That's, you can work with that. The anger comes up. That's part of the process. That's way more interesting and productive than feeling just, okay, how do I move forward and have the brake on? If you observe it and you get angry, awesome, because now stuff is unfolding. That anger can start to come to the surface. Everything around it can begin to unfold, and then there might be some more nuances between, the brake and the gas, so to speak. So those are really interesting to work with one-on-one, because, again, a lot of times the brake is something pretty deep and can really benefit from the guidance of, sometimes you're surprised at what actually is stopping it, because you might think, oh, I just want that. This thing is stopping me. And suddenly it's like this, wow, yeah, this is pretty heavy for me, right? So very powerful thing to explore, very powerful thing to work with if we have more time. We're actually coming up on the hour here, so we will have to call it at that. But part of me is tempted to just stay on for another 2 hours and dig into that, but I unfortunately can't. So great. Let me see. Do you ever do inner reconciliation focused sessions? Absolutely. I mean, for a minute there, that's pretty much all anyone ever asked me to do. So I think the previous version of the webpage where I do that was just called Inner Reconciliation Sessions and me talking about that. So I am happy to do that. And EFT is considered part of inner reconciliation, meaning it's not mandatory, especially if you don't like it, but if you do like it, I love to use it because while you're looking at the break, I'm using that break metaphor a lot, right? Just for consistency here. The tapping can be super helpful while you're describing what's going on. It sort of almost provides the words of sorts, and I can do a tapping round or something, but it's not actually completely married to it, in that you can do sort of inner reconciliation just by sort of mediating between those 2 points. So if you never heard of inner reconciliation, because I know some different people here, that was the process that G.P. Walsh is the name he gave. I really pushed him to use that name for it because that was I preferred that name. I was working with him before he had a name for it, and I obviously worked closely with him with that, and there are some other facilitators of it that trained with him, and I was involved in training those facilitators. So it's something I, spent a lot of time and energy with, and find to be very useful. And EFT and everything, it's a very malleable practice. You can kind of sneak it in without ever calling it anything, right? I'd just be, okay, close your eyes and observe. We sort of did it to a certain extent here, where I said, notice that it's not actually the same part. That's sort of where the name comes from, right? Inner reconciliation implies there are more than one thing going on that actually kind of come together and reconcile, which I like as a paradigm sometimes more than, okay, break through the blocks, break through the resistance. Although I actually find that useful at certain times and for certain people in certain situations. So I don't necessarily regard one thing as always superior, but it depends on where you're at and the sort of sensitivity of what's going on. So thanks so much. Like I said, there's a EFT call Sunday, which will focus on that. But do please, if you feel so inspired, keep me posted on what's interesting to you, what you would like to see more of. We have a nice group here today, so this time may be better. And yeah, anything you'd like to see more of, and what you would like to experience more on these calls. If you found that interreconciliation topic more interesting or more tapping, I think all of you are in the Facebook group, or you know how to reach me via email. So thanks so much. Maybe I'll see some of you on Sunday. I believe it's 2:30. Let me double check real quick, just in case anyone's watching this. Those of you, if you would like to automatically be added to the Zoom calls and you haven't done that already, you can just let me know. I'll have to double check. I posted it somewhere, but I didn't create it. It's most likely 2:30 p.m. Eastern, or maybe 2 p.m. But I'm almost there. Here we go. It is Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern New York time, if you're looking at the time zone. So that's Sunday, May 10th, a couple days from now. So thanks so much. Some of you were here for several calls this week. I'm glad that worked out, and it's been great for me to spend this time with you, and maybe I will see some of you Sunday. Okay, thanks again. I will see you soon. Take care.